everybody. Welcome to our milk and honey tasting with Torime Goren and Tal Chotiner from the distillery, Master Distiller and Vice President of International Sales. And we're just waiting for a few more people to join, and we'll get cracking right into it. Be great if you can start your cameras. It's a small group, so you can, if you have a question, a comment, no need to put it in the chat. We can all just join in the conversation. Can unmute yourselves if you need to ask a question. And really looking forward to hearing from the guys who actually make the whiskies, the background to some of these fantastic, unique whiskies that are coming out of Israel. Obviously, just a bit of housekeeping. 4 of the 6 are at cask strength, so hopefully none of you are driving this evening. That's the public service announcement. My conscience is now clear. Whatever happens now is up to you. And we will be doing a poll at the end. So be prepared to rate. You get to choose one of your favorites out of the range, out of the 6. Your favorite child. I know it's always hard. And also we are offering a special discount on our Whisky Show exclusive bottling at the end as well. Normal price is $1.99, but it's $1.79 for the next 24 hours. So while we're waiting for a few others, Tal and Tomo, what's the weather doing in Israel now? Is it near the end of summer? Is it?
It's never the end of summer. It's never the end of summer here. We always laugh and say we have 3 seasons. It's summer, war, and election. So we have everything together now. And it's August, it's hot like hell. Actually, it was kind of nicer today. 33 and humid. Summer ends around October, end of October, really. Even though you can call it autumn, but it's still hot.
Certainly in Tel Aviv, what's the lowest it'll ever drop to in winter?
Probably the coldest night will be something like 4 degrees, but maybe once or twice a year, nothing, and in the middle of the night. Usually winters can be maybe 11, 12, the coldest days. But it can rain. It can heavily rain, and then just a few minutes afterwards, it's sunny again. But at least it's not hot. But we have nice winters. And of course, we talked about it. We will talk about it when we will talk about one of the editions here. In the same day in the winter, you can actually ski and scuba dive in the same day, just driving like 5-6 hours.
Right. Well, so we'll just I think wait one more minute. But I've put in the link for our Peated STR, which was one of the stars of our Melbourne show that we held over the weekend. Was the one of the top rated and certainly one of the best sellers of the show. And curious to see if those of you who weren't at the Melbourne show, what you think of it, or if you've had it before. Plus some really interesting whiskies in the lineup, including one pretty unique, only 222 bottles of it in existence. And one of them made its way to Australia, which we're getting have the pleasure and luxury of trying today. And so I think we can kind of get started. We don't want to keep you guys too long away from the whiskies that we're going to be enjoying. And so before we really talk about the just a bit of the background to the distillery, the philosophy, etc., let's start with one whiskey which is really encapsulates the DNA of the distillery, which is the Classic. So if you can put some Classic in your glass, you've got 20 mils. You don't need to drink them all at once. As I said, the last 4 are all at cask strength. You can always come back to them. But a Classic at 46%, and let's hear from Tal and Tomer. Really, the philosophy behind this, how it started, and how this relates to the history of the distillery.
I'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about the timing for this whiskey, and then Tomer is going to tell you about the blend and everything. So for us, we wanted to make, as we call it, a table whiskey, something that you can put on the table and everyone can relate to this whiskey for the broader crowd. Of course, it's 46 ABV because it's non-chill filtered, so we cannot go below 46. From my side, we are kind of probably the most impatient nation in the world. So we're actually waiting for us to be waiting next to a cask, just to pack the cask, just for it to be older. It was the worst, probably waiting. And finally, we launched this whiskey at the end of 2019. We did some launchings in Paris, Amsterdam, and in Israel, in Hamburg, and Germany, January 2020. And then, of course, the world shut down on us. So it was the worst timing in the world. Fortunately for us, at the end of that year, this whiskey was picked to be one of the world's best 20 whiskeys from Whiskey Advocate, the American magazine. So we did something right, probably, with this whiskey. Tomer.
So this whiskey is what I like to call a table whiskey, and it's designed to be gentle, easy drinking. Although it's 46 ABV, those of you who prefer can add a few drops of water. It will open flavors up. And it's made from 75% ex-bourbon casks, which gives it a lot of vanilla and caramel flavors. And the rest of it are STR casks, which we will taste at the end of the tasting. STR gives us a lot of spicy notes and just a little bit of red fruits. It's basically a wine cask. So well wine casks.
Of course, with our climate, the STR tend to act different than in cold climates. STR stands for shaved, toasted, and recharred cask. And with our climate, it kind of spreads a little bit. The liquid goes more inside the wood and extracts some of the tannins, even some of the old red wine notes that there was in the cask before, and some of the spiciness. If you take an STR cask from Scotland, it's going to be just different. It's going to give you some more rich flavors, but not spicy and fruity like happens here in this crazy climate here in Tel Aviv.
So the STR is the late Dr. Jim Swan's kind of philosophy, which he's applied to a lot of distilleries. Do you say that the casks behave differently in different climates? Do you?
Yes, from the beginning, Jim Swan developed STR casks for Kavalan, which has really high humidity and high temperatures. And it's designed at the beginning to work really well with warm climate maturation, just as we have here in Tel Aviv. As Tal said, the cask gives a lot to the whiskey, but also allow the whiskey during the maturation to oxidate really well. And we need oxidation, fast oxidation also for quick maturation. So it balances the whiskey pretty good in those casks.
It gives you a huge amount of color and characteristic in the first year. So the maturation character goes like that, and then started to balance and just age like any other cask. But the first year is massive. So when we just started, we had some young spirit in that. We said, okay, it's not something we really like. So I think even with this whiskey, we designed it as the STR is just to season the blend and not to overpower it. But then we understand that after 3 years, it actually balances and can give you some more and more, years. Not a lot of years in our climate, but some more extras. It gets a different texture and some other, spicy notes, maybe some white pepper sometimes, some black pepper, and maybe some floral potpourri notes, all kinds of stuff like that. And again, in the STR, you have 3 different char levels, so you need to know how to play with them.
So from the beginning, we worked with Dr. Jim Swan as a consultant, as David said. And what Jim Swan liked really much about Israel is the hot climate, and more than it, the playground that we have here. We'll talk about it later when we reach to the Apex series. But we have 5 different climate zones here in Israel in such a small country. We'll talk about.
So just for you to understand, we are at the distillery at the moment in my office, and the distillery is just behind us. The cellars are here just behind us, little visitor center and everything. We have around 2,000 casks here, something like 2,000 casks here in Tel Aviv, and we have another warehouse just 20 minutes from the distillery with another 1,700 casks, and then some little experimental warehouses around the country. But here in Tel Aviv, we talked about the weather now. So today it's not that hot, it's only 33 or something like that, and 70% humidity, which is not the highest we can get here. The Mediterranean beaches, 5 minutes walk this way. So very hot and very humid. So during the summers, like what happens today, if you take the cask like that, and the air is full of water, so what we lose in the angel share is mostly alcohol, because the water doesn't have anywhere to evaporate because it's so humid. So you lose more alcohol. So the ABV actually goes down during the summer. Winters are cooler, not very cold, but cooler, and then drier. Even though it's raining, the air is dry, so you lose more water. So ABV goes up and down all year long. Eventually, it's going to go up. We fill the cask at 64.5, and after 3-4 years, it's going to be around 66, 68. It depends. And then the casks are actually spreading and shrinking. You lose more ABV, you lose more water or more alcohol. So actually, the casks are working all the time. And this is why we have such a rapid maturation and rapid wood effect. And this is a part of the hot climate maturation. And you need to do some other stuff for that. Not only, we love it. In Scotland, they say, we make the whiskey and then we let the whiskey sleep for 12 years. If you ever been to Tel Aviv, you know that no one sleeps here. It's a 24-hour city, and everyone is outside in bars. So even the casks are dancing. And I think that if you talk about that, we need to take it a little bit backwards and to see how we distill a little bit different, how we cut a little bit different in order to mature very fast. It's a different kind of method. I'll drink something because I was talking too much.
So rapid maturation sounds big advantage, but I'll talk about the evaporation, the angel share.
Oops. Are we stuck?
What?
Oh, you froze for a second there.
Oh, froze. Okay.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. Still, yeah.
So rapid maturation is an advantage when we are talking about the whiskey being ready for be drink. But we also have to keep the cask from over oaking, from over maturing. We really try to keep the core range, the 4 whiskeys that we have in core range. We'll drink 2 of them balanced, not over oaked, and I think that's what you can feel in the classic. We'll be happy to hear what you think about it.
Right. Any guys, just either a show of hands or in the chat, or make any comments. So those of you who had the classic before, what do you think of it as what the guys say, a table whiskey? To me, it's I compare it to in style as well to another one of Jim Swan's distilleries, which is Cotswolds. I think they have quite a similar approach. And I remember that they were telling me that one of the techniques in terms of that Jim Swan introduced with them, being also close to Scotland, quite cooler climate, is short or young whiskey quality is a narrow cut. And that was the technique they used. Is it something that he introduced there as well, also recommended for you guys as part of the maturation?
So the cut that we are doing is very narrow. It's from 80% to 70%. And the main reason for that, there are flavor reasons and all the decisions that we are doing during the distillation. But the main reason for the short cut, the narrow cut, is that the whiskey will not have a lot of time to oxidate in the cask, to balance. So we don't want a lot of faints. That's why we cut 70s, which is pretty high compared to, of course, Scotch distilleries, but a lot of distilleries. And so we perform the same narrow cut as Scott was.
So in average, it's 73% alcohol. Of course, we take it down before filling the casks. But what we lose from the oils at the faints and the tails, we gain because of the shape of the line arm. The shape of the still goes 45 degrees down. So that means that there's no reflux. Everything that goes up just goes straight down to the condenser. So we get kind of an oily, fruity, very coating new make. So this is what you can get the taste in a fast maturation. Of course, we cannot use a lot of the faints there because it helps with antioxidation for a long period of maturation. But sometimes you get some off scents that are going to stay kind of stinky during a very fast maturation of 4 to 5 years, which we're probably going to get 5 years, but not much older than that. With 11% yearly, and the wood effect is crazy. So if we do a 12-year-old here in Tel Aviv, it's probably going to be empty.
Or syrup.
Or syrup, yeah. Or
I think talking about the core range, we can move on to the Element Sherry cask, and while we're busy pouring that, just some comments about the classic. Seems to be a theme here, just in terms of the richness. Ranjan says a significant back palate compared to other 46s, textured long on the palate. Part of the non-short filtering and just the cask mix. So Element Sherry, another 46.
Yeah. So the distillery is kosher. The products are kosher, even though we're from Tel Aviv. So to get a rabbi here is not the easiest thing to do. We say that we have a devil's share because the angels are up in Jerusalem. So we decided to be kosher as an added value. It's not one of our pillars. It's not the most important thing for us. So it's not a problem to be kosher when you're producing whiskey. There was no whiskey production during biblical times, so there's less regulations and laws about that. But when you're using wine-based or grape-based products, casks like cognac, port, sherry, wines, those have to be kosher. And of course, we don't work on weekends and Jewish holidays, which is great for us because we have some days off. So it's not a problem. We have 500 wineries here in the country. We source some different casks from wineries. And cognac, we source cask from Godet, the House of Godet from La Rochelle, which they have their own kosher line. But there was a problem with the sherry because there is no kosher sherry around the world. And if there's one or two, it's really small brands, and usually phenos that you don't get a lot of cask from them. All in all, I think every old Jewish lady that dies, there's one less consumer of kosher sherry. So we actually had to make our own seasoning project there in Jerez, and Tomer just went there.
Yeah, so we are producing every year 55,000 liters of kosher sherry in 2 types. Half of it is PX, which is the sweet sherry style, and half of it is Oloroso, which is semi-dry, let's say like this. And then we season the cask in Jerez, in south of Spain, for 1 year of seasoning. And we empty the kosher sherry, most of it, unfortunately, going to the sink. And then we send the casks. So we have kosher sherry casks, which is the only in the world. But the more important thing for me is not the kosher thing, but the casks are really good, in my opinion. And I tasted a lot of sherry casks. The advantage that we have doing this process is that we have the ability to see the process, to check that it's going well, and to change things if we think that we need to change. The Element series, which the sherry part of it, also designed to be well drinkable, balanced, but still different from the classic, which is the base whiskey. So what we did here is we take the ex-bourbon and STR casks, just as we used in the classic, as a base of 50% from this blend, and then we added 50% of Oloroso and PX cask, which gives it, of course, sherry notes, sweet, some silky texture, some chocolate finish, but still it's drinkable. It's not definitely not a sherry bomb. And to be honest, it's just the sherry whiskey that I like. I'm not a big fan of sherry bomb, but we will taste one later.
Yeah. So I think it's at this day, the core range is classic and the three elements. And in the three elements, we have the sherry, of course, which was the first one for us to release, again, in the horrible year of 2020. And then we have a peated one, which again is not a peat monster. If this one is not a sherry bomb, the other one is not a peat monster. So again, we use 50% based on the same type of casks of the classic, and then we keep it complicated. We do a peated barley from the Czech Republic and from the UK in ex-bourbon casks, and unpeated barley in ex-Isla casks. So why keep it simple if we can? And again, it's not a very you get the finish, smoky finish. You get peated finish, but mostly grassy, very green, and some briny notes. And then we have a red wine cask, element red wine, 50% classic, and then 50% based on Israeli red wine casks, mostly Carignan. We played with a lot of different type of grape varieties, different terroir, different wineries. We kind of focusing and getting into. We think that our spirit is acting great with Carignan grape variety cask. And again, it's not very whiny whiskey. It's balanced. You can feel it's wine. So this is the core range, and as Tomer said, we're trying to get everything to be seasoned. So the sherry is seasoning the blend, and you get the sherry notes, but not overpowering. We don't like to cover a good steak with a bad sauce. I'm just kidding. But it's sometimes it's overwhelming, and we don't like it. We're going to do overwhelming stuff in the experimental series with a small batch, like in the Apex.
Yeah, in general, what we try to do in the all four core range whiskeys expressions is to maintain the distillery character inside the bottle, not overpower it with flavors and cask influence. Second is to make it really balanced, drinkable, balanced, and not overpowering.
I think that the balance is kind of a buzzword now in the industry, and often we see, especially from hot climate distilleries, where you have.
This is service. Look at this, David. You want to say hello? This is David. Is one of the.
I am Lindsay Lohan.
Is Lindsay Lohan today? Yeah, every day is some.
I'm Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, now it's Schwarzenegger.
No, I'm Lindsay Lohan.
Thanks.
What time is it there? Is it early in the morning?
No, it's past noon. No, it's 20 minutes after.
Okay,
after
not too early.
No,
Cheers.
Still beer o'clock. The often you get you get hot climate distilleries with sherry or wine casks where the balance is way off, it's one comment, Justin, is something honeyed, sultanas, raisins. Yeah, that cinnamon does you get that spiciness on the finish, which I think is it's. In terms of a sherry cask, it's a lot gentler than one would expect.
Yeah, we wanted to make, commercially, we wanted to make a Christmas edition, but we don't celebrate Christmas. Of course we celebrate everything here, but it's not our thing. So we decided to make a sherry cake. Sherry cake, Christmas cake, a Christmas treat or Christmas cake. We started to analyze the tastes of a Christmas cake. So we know it's vanilla, it's custard, it's like dried fruits, and it's warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff like that. So we actually did like a reverse classic. So you get, but again, you feel the cinnamon here. It's a combination between the PX probably and the STR, something like that. So we actually did a reverse Christmas, a reversed whatever it was. It was like a classic with the different ratios, but with a little bit of sherry. And all in all, it tastes great. So we have a Christmas cake now. We don't know what to do with that, but it's a nice whiskey.
In terms of the cask, the STR process, do you do that in-house, or do you outsource that, or do that off?
No, we order it from Portugal, from
JDS.
Cooper. It's called JDS, and it's done there. They were part of the development with Dr. Jim Swan and Kavalan at the beginning. So they know really well how to produce STR cask, and they use the same cask that Jim Swan used from the beginning. So we get it already done and just filling it. Of course, we have specifications, charring level, and even shaving level, but we get it. We're not doing it in-house.
Right. So when we moving on to the third one, while we're still on the subject of sherries, this is a for a young distillery, you've already got IBs, but so that's one that I just love the designs. Who designs the artwork for the bottles?
Well, I just want to about the comments. The two people prefer the sherry, and I think for people who drink whiskey, who drink a lot of whiskey and are used to drink whiskeys, they will look for more complex, more depth in whiskey. So I'm not surprised that you prefer the sherry, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
That's just what we wanted to do.
So I think if you talk about IBs, before we go into this whiskey, this was the first IB we ever did. It's the boutique.
Oh, yes.
You see the coast of Tel Aviv here, and the little swan, which is Jim Swan on the Mediterranean. And this is the pomegranate wine cask, 1 year old. And for us, they actually did. It's the Israeli the boutique malt company, another whiskey company, because it was only 1 year old. So this was the first one we ever did. It was a 1 year old spirit. And then, so we have some stuff, but we work with Scotch Malt Whiskey Society and with BBR and some, Single Cask Nation. So we have some Mark Watt whiskey. So we have some, but usually it's people we trust and it's people we like. SMWS, and of course, this whiskey is bottled by this guy, so it's his own little business.
It's not a business. Don't. It's just a side hobby that I'm doing. Basically, I'm a whiskey geek, and I came into the whiskey industry from being a whiskey lover or whiskey geek, and I don't like the word collect, but I buy a lot of whiskeys that honestly I plan to drink everything, but I buy faster than I can drink. So
just call me.
So from time to time I bottle a few casks, and I bottled two casks from M&H about 2 years ago. This is a Sherry PX, what we are drinking now, 3 years old. And here, I think this is a Sherry bomb. Yeah, we drank stronger bombs than this, but I think the balance here and the sherry notes are really.
And it's at 56.4 ABV. So.
Distilled 2017. Yep. 3 year old, distilled 2017, bottled 2020.
So about the label, I have all my bottles are the same Japanese style labels. That designed by one tattoo designer here in Israel, tattoo artist. And here in the M&H duo, I did 2 bottles at the same time, and we have each still. We have 2 stills here at the distillery. So here is the spirit still, and we have another bottle with the wort still.
You see
the tattoo is really meaty. This certainly gets your salivary glands just dancing completely. It says that the nose is magnificent. Absolutely. So one of those whiskeys you can just nose for a long time, and probably at that high ABV. If you do have another glass, you can just let it breathe for a bit out of the bottle. It'll change in the glass as well, just with time. So just I was lucky enough to get a couple of bottles of one of Tome's other bottlings, which was a 21-year-old Mortlock. Which is was spectacular, and
It was great. And
just a sneak peek that might make an appearance at one of our the Whiskey List top shelf tastings coming up in the next few months. We're looking at doing a whole series of Mortlock IBs, and that will feature in that.
oh, great.
That again, there's 222 bottles of this on the planet, and I suspect this is probably the only one in Australia. So you guys are lucky you're getting to taste it, and we've managed to share it with you guys, which is what whiskey is all about.
It was too good. It sold out really quick. I don't have any bottle.
We're just, went looking for a bottle for this tasting, and it was we just found a little bit.
Well, just so that we don't skimp on anything. That's what's left in the bottle that ended up in the sample bottles. There's absolutely nothing left. All there is a smudge on the bottom.
Yeah, squeezing.
I didn't want to filter it at all. Just really quick filtration, and it does have some sediments from the cask. The sherry is very thick and sticky, so part of the bottle has some sediments, and that's fine by me.
So there's 100% PX.
Yes, it's 100% PX cask.
Probably the first cask we ever, almost the first cask that was ready from the PX, because it was the half a year season. Yeah. So before we got a regular cask from Jerez from Spain, we had like a little experiment there with half a year seasoning in Spain with the wine. So this was just seasoned for half a year with the PX, and then brought it here to Tel Aviv, and then this whiskey was aged for 3 years in a kind of a partially seasoned cask. But again, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's so much sherry there, and it's so much.
It's a cask, hogshead cask that's been seasoned for only half a year, and look at the flavors that it gave.
But that's the thing with PX, is that you very seldom see 100 PX of any age because it's too intense. So the combination of the short maturation and the short seasoning time, it works to your advantage using PX.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a question here: what's the oldest M&H whiskey either released or in progress? I tasted a 5-year-old ex Isla but and someone actually, I'm going to America. I never remember where it is. I think it's what Minneapolis or Milwaukee or something like that. And it's and we had some tastings of we had a 5-year-old ex Lafroy cask, and someone just wanted to pay me like $1,000 for it was a sample bottle,
but it wasn't released. I think the oldest that was released and bottled as a single cask was 4 years old, and it's always a conflict if to keep the cask to see what happened, and we have some even 7 years old casks, but most of the cask we need whiskey to sell, so most of the casks are bottled at 4 years old. Some of them are 5 inside the blends, and I think
maybe with the cognac cask.
One of the SMWS casks that is going to be bottled in the near future is 5 years old, and I think this is the oldest that we've done so far.
But we do have some cognac cask. It's a different kind of wood. It's the Limousin wood, which are like 400 liters, so less effect, and of course it's a more dense wood than the American one or any other wood. And we did some full maturation in those kosher cognac casks from Goren, and we can see that we might be able to push it for maybe 6 years and then release it, but we'll see. It's you can never know. It's it's changing all the time, but it's a beautiful kind of wood, and we really like those casks. You know that they can only make the casks in cognac from this type of wood called Limousin in this famous forest next to the city of Limoges. And just a quick fun fact that the Americans in the 50s, when they made those cars, the dashboards and the doors were from the same type of wood. This is why they call it limousines. It's because of the wood. And this is a crazy wood. So if anything can push us to a longer time with less wood effect and of course less probably angel share because it's more dense wood, it's going to be those French oak. But we'll see. Probably with the core range, we're going to eventually be around 5 years.
Yeah, the core range will be around 5 years. I think single cask you will be able to find some 7, maybe 8 years old. After that, most of the cask will be really over oaked, and I will not be happy to release it. But we'll see. Only time can tell us.
Great notes from Jonathan. Silky oiliness, dried sultanas. Yeah, that's typical of the PX with and plum syrup. Making me hungry.
but again, not it didn't go over and became soy sauce. Sometimes when you have an over maturation or a really sherry bomb, you get kind of soy sauce notes, and it's not this one. Well, it's only 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm 12-year-old and he's 16, so we mature much faster here in the Middle East.
Yeah, in whiskey years, yes. The next two are in the Apex range. So
do you have any questions? If you have more questions, I don't want to run. I want to give you the time. We're here.
Yes. There's a door. You said that's a 400-liter, the Limousin oak. What's the largest casks that you have maturing anywhere? Do you have any big puncheons or butts?
So we have butts. We have sherry 500 butts, and those are the largest casks that we have. To be honest, I don't like to deal with those casks. It's very hard to roll it and to empty it and doing everything. But in this climate, it works very good. Not too much wood effect. After 3 years old, you feel the sherry pretty good, but it's not over oak. It's really nice effect.
And the smallest, do you do any small cask? There's a lot of trend in Australia to do small cask, 100-liter, even sometimes smaller. What's
I know, but I want to complain about it because mostly, and to be honest, I love a lot of Australian whiskies, but to be honest, I find a lot of Australian whiskies too intense in flavors. And I don't think there's a reason doing maturing whiskey in really tiny casks in the Australian climate.
We do have some quarter casks and octaves as well, but we don't use them a lot because with our climate it's going to be too much wood anyway. So we have 56 liters is our smallest one. Ex-bourbon and ex-rye. We do have some fill. Yeah, we do have some.
Yeah, we do have. We did a lot of experiments with a lot of cask sizes. Basically, I prefer to use barrels minimum 200 liters and not smaller than it. But just to be clear, I love Australian whiskey. It wasn't a.
I think we're heading towards, if we haven't already got to it, Emma might know, 100 Australian distilleries with whiskey in the market. 10 years ago, there were 12. Now there's probably 100.
Yeah, something like almost 70 whiskey distilleries, and then you've got a couple of hundred gin distilleries who are like, oh, our whiskey is coming to maturation. So they've been sneakily making whiskey without telling anyone. So there's going to be a lot more on the market soon.
I think in one of the whiskey shows in London, we had the same masterclass with David from Star Wars. And it was great. We really like the stuff there. And then I actually tasted Sullivan's Cove this year. So you did some crazy stuff down there
in Rochefort.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's I like with Star Wars. I like have the concept. they know what they do, they have the concept, and they like to keep it, and it's great, and it's beautiful stuff. We also had like a masterclass, online masterclass in America, I think, with Star Wars. And yeah, I think there's a question here. If you know an Israeli, it's a very small country, and you probably know someone from high school, from the army, or somewhere. So it takes an Israeli a lot of time to understand that a local guy is making something that is okay, or that is good, and whatever. And so, first of all, it was like that with local wineries. Now, I think in the year 2000, there was like we were drinking cheap Chilean wines and never tasted Israeli wines, and then now it's the other way around. I think around 70% of the consumption here is local wines, and it's the same thing with breweries. And now, because we were the first distillery here in Israel, it takes time for Israelis to understand that this, really, anyone is producing whiskey in Tel Aviv, they prefer to buy Glenfiddich and not drink something, because they probably cheat, they probably buy spirit, they probably. Israelis are very suspicious about one to the other. But then if you bring a medal, it's always like that. Just get the recognition from outside, and then all of a sudden they discover you. So last year, it was, of course, COVID and lockdowns. We won Craft Producer of the Year on the World Whiskey Award. And this year, we won Craft Producer, what was the Brand Innovator of the Year. And then there were some pieces about us in papers and TV, and then all of a sudden everyone knows M&H. So sales are going up in Israel. But I really, I envy the Australians, I envy Dutch guys. If you go any bar in Amsterdam, you're going to see Patrick Zuidam stuff, Milestone, and of course you see Star Wars, you see all of those. And it's going to take some time with Israelis. We always think that something that comes from outside is better than what we do, but it's not. And so it's going to take some time, and we're growing. Not always like that. So we're growing here, and there is 3 other distilleries now. So all in all, it's going to be like an Israeli whiskey category, and we really like it. I think it's a good thing.
Is there any regulations for Australian whiskey? What can be called Australian whiskies, or how can it be made?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's obviously the criteria are the same as anywhere else, but the age, it has to be 2 years, made from the grains, obviously, and matured in casks. It doesn't specify oak, which is interesting. Right. Not to say that most of it isn't in oak, but it gives the local guys the flexibility. If you want to use an old fence and rescue the fence palings and make it into a cask, you can. And there's lots of interesting Australian woods.
But it must be distilled and matured in Australia.
Well, not quite. It's even the age statement and the cask stuff. It's just like, this is like the recommendation. You can still, get away with calling it whiskey if it doesn't meet the recommendation. But luckily, there isn't much of that going on. But
all right, that's interesting, because
it's kind of an unspoken rule.
Yeah. So in Israel, as the category growing of Israeli whiskey, I think we should think about regulations. What can be called Israeli whiskey, just to avoid those recommendations.
So I think that, but
Absolutely.
If we're talking about, it's like that. It's because you don't want someone to drink a 1-year-old whiskey that was made from, I don't know, hummus, from chickpeas, and say it's Israeli whiskey, and then you're not going to be on the same shelf. So yeah, we are working, but we know the guys here. It's a small market, so we all work in we have a good relationship with every other thing. But if we talk about pushing the boundaries, I think that the next series, which is our small batches, we call it the Apex series, and no, it's the
Pomegranate first.
Pomegranate. So we we produced the core range to be very balanced, as Thomas said, and you just tasted two of them, but all the rest are, as I said, not a pink monster, not a very winey whiskey, wine-forward whiskey. But with the elements, with the Apex series, we do tend, to go wild, because this is our, this is the fun thing about being a craft distillery. We don't need 50 people to sign on an experiment. We just do that. And we call it the never-ending coffee, because Tomer and me having coffee in the morning, I think about stupid stuff, and he said, okay, let's go for that, instead of telling me you're stupid, and or the other way around. And then what helps us is to experiment is the fast maturation, because then you can see after 3, 4 months, 6 months, you see the direction, you see if it could be a good one, or it could be a very interesting one, or just not. So yeah, it's for us, it's the fun thing, and it's really helps us to push some boundaries, and then just to make a lot of buzz. I think the first one we ever did was like a fully matured Chardonnay cask. So it was 5 Chardonnay casks, really good one from the mountains of Jerusalem, winery called Castel. It was crazy, white wine, white flowers. It's usually you don't see a lot of full maturation in white wines. You see some, and we bottled it the way we like to drink it at 61.2% alcohol. So it was kind of hard for some of the consumers. And then rum casks and some other. And I think one of the signatures that we were looking for, Israeli DNA, is the pomegranate wine cask. We eat a lot of pomegranates. We drink pomegranate juice. It's a part of our everyday maybe diet here in Israel. And of course, the Jewish New Year's, Rosh Hashanah, we eat pomegranate seeds. And we have a winery in Israel. It's called Rimon. Rimon is a pomegranate in Hebrew. For Rimon Winery, they make wines not from grapes, only from pomegranate seeds. And of course, we took their casks and we said, okay, please let it be good, because the whole idea was great. We just didn't know what the outcome will be. And I think what you taste now is 14 as well, I think. So it's the first one. It's a 57.2, David.
It's the whoopsie.
That's 14.
Trying to read it in the light.
It's a 59.
59.
59. So it's the second batch.
Yep.
It's the second batch we did. So it's ex-bourbon that was finished for 8 months, I think, in pomegranate wine casks. So 59. Sorry about that, guys. But
what I like about the pomegranate cask is that you can actually imagine that you chew the actual fruit.
seeds, yeah.
Seeds, and feel the fruit inside the whiskey, and it's amazing. It's something that you don't drink a lot. It's very unique, innovative, and very Israeli, as Tal said.
You just nosing it, you get that sweetness. I think in our next one that we do, we're going to have to have some pomegranates for people to taste and to compare.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. We can mix the two apexes that we drink today.
Yeah.
So it's obviously, it's certainly unique. It's nobody else in the world is doing it. Interested to see what everybody thinks of it. If it's the first time you're tasting it.
Yeah, it is some kind of soury, some kind of sweet. It's a combination of flavors, very complex. It changes in the glass during the time. If you give it 5 minutes, it will be different.
I'm just thinking this would go really well with Turkish light chocolate. Somebody asked a question about different types of casks. Have you ever thought of using, or have you used kind of sacramental wine cask, Manischewitz?
Oh no.
Yeah, so basically,
I'm not sure it's even from grapes. So
no, but honestly, basically, I will not say no to any kind of cask. We really like to experiment every cask type. Maybe it will not be released ever. It will ever be released, but
we'll drink it. So.
we'll try and drink it. Magen David barrels. Do you mean the shape or? Is there any?
Again, David. No, it's those cheap sweet wines that.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
not?
I'm not sure they actually aged anything there.
No, they're
and
not.
again, and I think it's not even from grapes. I think it's sugar and water and some color. It's something that but when you're in the army and you stay for the weekend in the army, you don't have anything to drink, and it's kind of like it's in the Friday dinner. You have a little glass of that, so we call it the hammer. It's a hammer wine because if you drink too much, your head's going to be like hammers. So we don't going to use that as casks.
It's a good point about this one also, that high ABV, that yes, certainly it does need some time in the glass.
Yeah.
And approach it again, a couple of drops of water as well with that, close to 60%. But yeah, it's the nose is really amazing. Tarragon, okay.
There's something kind of green, like a bouquet garni or something like that.
Mm.
How has this been received worldwide? Say small, limited batches, but is it, because being how unique it is?
This is the first one that is sold out every time we do a small batch. So we had until now 3 small batches. The last one was like 2,500 bottles, and before something like that, between 2,500, 2,000 bottles, and it's gone because it's really unique and people really like this one. And not only because of it's so different, but people can relate to this taste and just finish. Every time we do that, we do a kind of because it's one of our signatures now, and it just disappears in a second. So probably I think it's good.
So the Apex series, you say it's a small batch. So will you do different releases of the same casks from batch to batch? So you say this one is from the second batch of the Pomegranate series?
Yes. So every release from the Apex series will be different. The Pomegranate winery has different kind of casks. They have fortified wine, it's fruit wine. They have some dry wine. They have rosé pomegranate wine. So we use different casks for each batch. So every batch is different, is interesting, and it's open mind to another directions.
I think that the last one we did was the first one that was actually fully matured in pomegranate wine casks, and it was a bit different.
I think they have the first one.
They have the second one. 59 is the second. Yeah. So it's different from one to the other, and of course we had the next one we're going to try. We had 2 batches until now, and so every one of those have a batch number in it. And I think now, what's the last one we did?
Last one is 19.
16. So yeah, we have. All right.
Or 18.
18. So even 18, if it's the same, I don't know, 2 cognac editions are going to be different because it's a small batch. So we don't want it to be consistent. We want it to be crazy and different.
This is our place to go outside the core range, the distillery character, the balance, to go wild, to let the cask do their job, and not stop the cask and try to keep it or not over oak. We look for flavors, we look for different things, we look for interesting maturation, and every time will be different.
Talking about different, while people are just digesting that and pouring the next one, the
Just want
Dead
to
Sea cask.
say to Ranjan that yes, sometimes I feel that also. Sometimes with the really aromatic flavors of the pomegranate, you're not able to you expect for a really massive flavors, and sometimes it doesn't deliver. And yeah, that happens. That's one interesting thing about whiskey, about cask strength whiskey, about different style of casks. And
So
thank you
Dead
for the
Sea.
comment.
You
Yeah.
mentioned the Dead Sea, and it just conjures up, specific, just the emotions, the visions, and so to call a whiskey the Dead Sea cask, there's certain expectations that it's salty, possibly.
Yeah.
So obviously it's below sea level, which is probably unique in terms of whiskey maturation. So what are the challenges, and how do you do that? How do you get the casks there? What's the rationale of the Dead Sea casks?
So I think before we talk about that, we did started to talk about the different variation of climate here in Israel. So just we say we can ski and scuba dive in the same day in the winter. So our tallest mountain is above 2,000 meters, sorry, and the lowest place is minus 438 and 28 meters below sea level. Actually, in the morning, if you start your day here in Tel Aviv, which is 0 in Mediterranean climate, one hour later, or as we say, 45 minutes and 3,000 years away from us is the city of Jerusalem, which is up on the mountains in 750 to 900 meters above sea level. It's probably snows there like once in 2 years. And then 1 hour later, you're in almost like a mile down. It's minus 428 meters below sea level. Sometimes you actually have to chew a gum while driving there, just that your ears don't pop. So it's different kind of climate, and Dr. Ginson really, he called it the playground. So you can actually try and play. So we have different kind of small experimental warehouses with between 20 to 50 casks next to the Sea of Galilee, which is sweet water, just regular water, drinking water, very humid and minus 210 meters below sea level. And then you have the mountains of Jerusalem. We have a little warehouse. I think it's above 600 and something, almost 700 meters above sea level, very dry. And now a new one in the desert. And of course, the famous one, which was our first one, because it was the most extreme one, was the Dead Sea. So Dead Sea is, one of the most extreme places in the world. It started off as, first of all, different and extreme, and then, of course, marketing, the lowest place on earth. So why not? Let's try to do that. But then comes the challenges.
So 25% angel share a year because of the heat. It can reach 50, 55 degrees big part of the year. Then it's very, very dry. So we lose a lot of whiskey, and the maturation is really intense. And we get a lot of wood influence. So what we are doing now, it's keeping the cask for 1 year from the 3 at the Dead Sea, then sending it back to the distillery in Tel Aviv for the rest of the maturation. But you can still feel the texture, you can still feel the minerality from the air, from the atmosphere. Some say salt. I don't believe the salt gets into the cask. Yes, I play with your mind sometimes, and I put just half a percent of peated whiskey into this, so you can think it's.
That was the age down there. So, and just think about the air pressure with minus 428 meters. So it actually presses the liquid even more inside the wood. So you get much more wood effect. And sometimes the casks are almost crumbling from the above. If you talk about salt, there's probably something in the air. I think it's minerals. There's lots of minerals in the air that goes there. And of course, you have a big loans. The loans of the cask are big because it's 25% angel share. But there's not a lot of sea or ocean spray or something like that, because the water are so heavy. They have like, I think, around 40% salt inside the water. So there's not a lot of waves and spraying, but there is something there. So of course, the problem with that is just we need to actually rotate the cask from Tel Aviv to Dead Sea and back. And until now, it was on the roof of the hotel just next to the beach. So just think about the guys just rolling the cask on the carpets of the hotel. Just So yeah, now we have a new warehouse, our own warehouse down there at En Gedi, which is a kibbutz. It's a oasis. It's a beautiful place.
Just nearby the sea,
Yeah.
the Dead Sea. And swimming at the Dead Sea,
So
Wow.
yeah.
if it was one time, it's interesting. But
It's not swimming, it's floating.
yeah,
And it's yeah, just you need to remember if you have a cut or something that you forgot about that, because you can, you know, climb up on the mountains if this kind of salt is going to touch your skin.
Before you had your warehouse at Engedi, where were you keeping the casks? Just on the beach?
It's on a roof of a hotel, open air,
I'm trying to show you
and
how it was.
we just took them off, and I think we were really lucky that it didn't crumble on the room, but so it's heavy. But anyway, it's up on the roof, open air. I don't know, just like 5 stories above the beach, so it's really close to the beach. You have anything here, or?
Yeah, look at this. So you can see it's a rooftop of a hotel, and the sea just nearby.
So yeah, now it's going to be on the ground. We're going to build our own one. We just built it, and it's really close to the beach. And still, it's not only, we don't talk about the salt, but it is. I think it's the climate, it's the altitude. All of those together actually affects the whiskey much more. And I think you can actually see in Israel, it's crazy because it's 2 hours here, 2 hours there. You have different terroir for whiskeys, which you don't really talk about whiskeys. And our terroir is after we produce it. It's just there during maturation. And I think this is really, you know, it's fun to play with because it's not far. You can actually drive, just be visiting all of our warehouses in one day. But this whiskey, actually, so if we talk about 25% in a year, and then in Tel Aviv 11, so it's around 40% altogether, even more than that. And this is why it's more expensive for us to make it. And I think that when we just bottled the first edition, we sent it to all kind of competitions, even with no labels, and it came first in San Francisco, Double Gold San Francisco. What was that? Frankfurt, whatever. Whenever we sent it, it became one of the first, and it was one of the last 3, I think, nominated 3 finalists for the World Best Whiskey, the World Whiskey Awards, but we didn't win, so we don't talk about it.
As Jason says, even at that ABV of 56, it's really gentle. It's got great balance.
And here also, every batch, if we focus on the other apexes on different cask types, here we focus on location, on terroir, on climate zone. So we use different kind of cask for each batch. So each batch will be different, will be interesting. There's a lot to learn from and to expect.
So before we just hit the last one, which is our peated STR cask for our whiskey shows, what's next in the pipeline for the Apex range? There's been some teasers on Facebook with the black bottles. Anything exciting coming up?
So first, we just bottled 3 really interesting apexes, which are tequila cask, ex-Alba cask, which is how we call the Scotch casks, and this orange wine cask, which I think we are the first to do, but maybe not. And orange wine, I heard that you probably know what it is in Australia.
Very trendy, you know. It's a funky white wine that is actually, it's a white wine that actually made like red wine. So longer fermentation, longer skin contact, a little bit of oxidation, and the color is almost orange. This is why I call it orange wine. It's mostly natural wines or biodynamic wines. So we just sourced it from a really small Israeli winery that makes crazy funky wines, and we actually like it. We want to be the first, and I guess we are the first because we don't stay in one little distillery in Scotland. We know the rest of the world, and we know the rest of the industry in Israel, so we can actually play with our knowledge and source cask from those guys. The only problem is there was only 2 casks, so this one is 859 bottles, 58 now, because we have one. So, but you can see, I just came back, I think, a few weeks ago from New York, and you see in every restaurant you have red, white, rosé, and now you have some orange wine category. Someone asked, Lakes Distillery did an orange wine, not orange wine. It's a ranchia. It's a kind of a orange peels type of sweet wine they make in Catalonia, I think, and it's not the same. This is real wine, not with orange peels. But yeah, we know David Dundee is a good friend of both of us.
David is a good friend, and we really appreciate everything that Lakes does.
There's been the tequila cask. It's always, whenever we do tastings with innovative distilleries, somebody always mentions, why don't you do a tequila cask? That's fantastic that you guys are doing a tequila cask. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, so
we have so much other casks. As Thomas said, we're never going to say no to any cask. We just thinking, and so we have a lot of more bullets in.
but also getting cask, different types of cask, it's easy. Just call a broker and they send you everything is got. But what to do with each cask, we really put a lot of thinking of each cask types, what to do with, if to finish or to full mature, or to combine it, or what to do with each cask. So I think the tequila cask, I was really afraid of the flavors that it will give, because I still want it to be whiskey, and tequila can influence the whiskey to be more tequila-ish. So we finished it for half a year, and it was great. And I also put virgin oak cask into the combination of cask that went into this finish, so it didn't influence too much, and it's really silky, and it gets.
So you can notice the tequila. It's not overwhelming, but I think it's just a good whiskey. It's just overall, you know, when I taste it, it tastes like a 15-year-old single malt Scotch. Not really, you know, tequila forward. If you get a little bit, you know, the complexity of that, then you can get the different kind of spirit notes. So yeah, it's I don't know. We're playing, as we said, we're playing all the time. So yeah, last whiskey is the Peated STR. This one is still. It's not this one. We have a different one.
This is our so this is the Whisky Show exclusive. Did you guys keep a bottle?
They did.
Yeah, it's a single cask.
They did for the Whisky Show Australia.
Okay.
Did you not keep a cask for yourself? I mean, a bottle for yourselves?
Oh, we never. If we say that you have 274 bottles, you will get 274 bottles.
We'll have to
but
send
this
one
one
back. Not that one.
This was a small batch. So this was a small batch of few Peated STR casks. This one is at 58.9. Yeah, Peated STR, Tomer.
Yeah, so it's a cask that distilled on July 19th, 2018, and bottled at February 222. So it's
Czech Republic?
just under 4 years old. It's a Czech Republic malt, peated malt. So it's very unique peat flavors. Don't expect any peat, Isla peat flavors or things that we used to think about peat regularly. I think the intense flavors from the STR cask, the spiciness and the wood, with the flavors of the really unique peat, gives it unique flavors, distinct flavors, which I really like. I like the profile of those casks.
If I remember correctly, it's more, because this one is a batch. It's more flinty, kind of like a firestone kind of smoke in it, minerality in that, and of course the combination with the STR, you get some fruitiness, you get some depth, and I think that usually when we taste those casks at 3 years, say, okay, how come we made an 18-year-old Talisker in 3 years. Well, it's not exactly this, or Seneg or Kilchoman Seneg or something like that, but it is the combination between. So it's 1 and 1 that actually makes 3 or 4. So I think something with the spiciness of the STR actually takes the smokiness, the peatiness to be a different sensation. How do you like this one, guys?
You've still got that sweetness. Look, I'm biased because we chose this cask ourselves. We actually had I think 2 or 3 samples over a period of almost a year. We said, okay, well, let's give it another summer. We had it at natural cask strength of the 62%. We thought that was probably just a bit too hot. So we said, we think it's between 55, 58, and leave it to you to choose that that sweet spot. Because obviously we trust you that you know what you're doing more than we do, and came out to just over 55, and it's certainly been well received at our whiskey shows, and it's, as you say, it's even for people that don't like peated whiskey. If you don't tell them that it's peated, they still enjoy it for what it is. It's got that balance, that gentleness, so the casks themselves. What casks are they? Where they from?
So it's STR cask from Portugal. It's a bottom shelf wine from Portugal, which we shave. We rid of most of the wine flavors from the cask because of the shaving. We don't want a lot of wine flavors, but after that we are toasting and recharring it, so we get a lot of wood flavors, a lot of vanilla, a lot of spiciness. And it works really good.
And I think that the spirit, because it's from a peated malt from the Czech Republic, is a kind of a different peat. It's a different peated new make than the one you get from the UK or from Scotland. It's kind of more earthy and more mineral. And I think the combination just accelerates everything like that.
It reminded me that the first time we got together as a team to taste the samples was at the Melbourne show last year. And now last week we had at the Melbourne show again, where we actually presented it in Melbourne. So it's and even though it's the show exclusive, it's been selling well at the shows. There still is some left. The problem with having it at the shows, it's also one of these whiskies that you need that time. It's what I call drinking with intent. It's compared with, say, the classic, which is your table whiskey. This is just enjoying quietly with the friends, listening to good music, reading a book, and it's hard to really appreciate that if you're walking around the stands at a whiskey show. Whereas now you've got a chance. It's your last whiskey of the tasting tonight, so you can let it sit in the glass. Try it after a few minutes. You'll see a change in the glass. Just with time in the glass, you don't need to add water. For me, it's really easy drinking at that 55%.
Yeah, I recall when we were like tasting all the samples, David was like, just try all these, tell me which one you like. And I think I picked out this one. I was like, it's cool, it's different, it's well done peat. It's, probably one of the best international peated whiskies that I've tried, because everyone has a hand at it, but it makes such a difference where you get the peat from and where you mature it and everything. And I think someone else was like, oh, I really like this sherry one. I was like, no, we're gonna do the peated. We have to do the peated. And yeah, I'm so thrilled with how it came out. It was really exciting. Yeah.
So normally we're retailing it at $199, but I put the link up in the chat that for the next 24 hours it's $179. So there's still some left after our shows. For those of you who've got a bottle and want another one, or so your first one.
To answer Whiskey Insulation's question, so from the beginning, we're working with a lot of malt suppliers. Now we have 3. And from the beginning, we really liked the Czech Republic supplier peated malt. So we used it a lot. It was a 25 ppm. I think this one is 40 ppm, Czech Republic peated malt. And we just liked it. It's different. It's interesting. It's not that we don't try to copy the Scotch. We learns from the Scotch everything. I think all the world of single malt producers are learning from the Scotch. They are the masters of single malt. But we have different climate, we have different stuff, we have different ingredients, and we don't try not to copy them. We try to do things our way. And
we check everything. So we play with different yeasts. We experiment with different kind of yeast. We experiment with different kind of cut. We experiment with different kind of fermentation time, with distillation time, with everything. So we always do the core range, and then we try to make some other stuff, and then see what it goes to, and maybe we're going to change it later on. But if something is received good by the consumers, we're gonna keep it like that. And this is where the fun thing is actually coming in, the Apex series. So the black bottles you actually saw, David, it's gonna be, we just launched a few of them. This is just an empty bottle, but so this is a single cask that Tomer actually picks. Tomer, me, and Johnny, and some of the guys here. So it's going to be a black Apex single cask that we picked. It could be maybe even an ex-bourbon cask, but we find an exceptional one, a beautiful one, and we think it's going to be, it's deserved to be a single cask and not just put it in the blend. So we're going to do that. So this is our way of picking, hand picking some single casks, and of course all the rest. As we say, we're going to have some more fun stuff next year. We just did something we called Arts and Craft. Arts and Craft is this year's edition, and every year is going to be a different theme. So this year was a craft breweries from all kinds of places around Israel. We just gave them casks a few years ago. They aged their beer in that, and then we aged the whiskey in the beer cask. So this one was, this is a chocolate porter from Shapiro, which is a brewery. Next year, probably, I don't know, dessert wines or whatever. So we're gonna play, and this is the artist that made the labels, the local one. We can't sit in one place for 10 minutes. So I think this was the longest time we sat in the same place.
Right, so while you're busy sipping on your STR, Peated STR, let's launch the poll and give you a few minutes.
Woo. Can we vote?
Can we vote?
Yeah, you can vote.
Goren's whiskey. Arts and Crafts, maybe not this edition, but we'll see. It's maybe the next year's edition of the Arts and Craft will be available in the Australian market. It takes time to get from Tel Aviv to Australia, even by swimming.
You tend to miss out on a few things that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody, just a bit longer to get your votes in. So far, the Peated STR, it's kind of neck and neck with the Goren's 3-year-old. Well, one's available and one's not, so it's
Yeah.
Easier choice.
Oh, but I will pick the STR cask for the Australian exclusive.
Yeah, it's a good whiskey.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, couple of people still have to put in the votes. You can't sit on the fence.
You must decide. There is only one.
Okay, well, let's so Goren's with 50%, 42% for the Peated STR.
Good work on that IB. Might need to do more PX sherry whiskies.
Right, any last questions? Thanks very much, Tomer and Tal, for joining us. It's I know you're every day is an adventure at the M&H Distillery. So appreciate taking time with your busy schedule. And any last questions, comments for the guys before we leave them? Well, hopefully we can look forward to a lot more of the interesting releases and more of the core range in Australia soon.
Absolutely. I'd love to get my hands on that orange wine cask.
I'll keep you
Giving
warm.
us the teasers. Good price?
Emma, we'll keep a bottle for you, no worries.
Awesome. I'll just have to buy the plane ticket to Israel.
We actually have to come your way next year, but we'll see. So yeah, I've been traveling so much, and no, it's not that far, only 24 hours flight. So yeah, it's
Well, soon there's a direct flight, so we'll
Yep.
yeah, they keep opening more and more lines. Yeah, I just came back from South Africa last week, so yeah, it's guys, thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for tasting, and thank you for your comments. It's really interesting for us just to see the other side of the world, what you think about what we do, and we always try to be very careful not to fall in love with what we do. And when you like our whiskeys, it's great for us. So it's another good day. Yeah, it's another good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
on
you
the
very
tour.
much. Cheers.
Bye.